Let's talk about 3 stocks in July that are looking pretty good. And in this video, we're going to focus on one theme: esports and video games. My favorite activity that has finally come back into my life. I used to be a huge gamer as a kid. My best birthday ever, still until this day, is my 6th birthday when I got my first PlayStation. I started playing Tekken and everything changed. But then as I got older in college and beyond college, I stopped playing video games in the name of total optimization of my life, so I could be the most productive robot there was, which was stupid. And I realized it once I went down my Buddhist path. That happened a few years ago. I started playing video games again. Life has been so much better. Keeps my brain young, constantly having to learn new games and stuff. I started feeling that old man thing where you don't want to learn any new technology, you just want to stick with your old stuff. That laziness. Video games actually helps break that. It helps you keep that elasticity. And you know, these games during these CCPV times are absolutely essential. I can't see my friends in real life, but I could drop out of planes with them and hang out in the gulag. By the way, comment down below with what games you're playing right now. I'm halfway through that Final Fantasy VII remake, throwing me way back to my childhood years with that first PlayStation I was talking about. And games like that, just fantastic time pass. Very good. But while video games might be my favorite time pass, they are a huge industry that is continuously growing. They're basically taking over media. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video and how to play it. And remember, stock picks are important. That's why we do these videos, but they're only 10% of the process. The other 90% is your actual strategy. How do you manage those trades? And that's what we teach in this free training. There's a link in this video and down below in the description and comments. Make sure you check it out because it is free and you want to get that strategy in place or improve the strategy that you already have. But let's jump into the rise of esports, which was a big report we just released through MacroOps, our investment research firm. So check it out. The whole esports industry is growing like crazy each year, over 20%. And that's been happening for the last 5 years. Now the industry has over 500 million people worldwide, mostly in Asia, which accounts for 51%, but 50 US colleges now recognize esports as legitimate varsity sports. There's also talks about getting esports into the Paris Olympics. So 20% a year is a crazy growth rate, but they still have so much more to go. It's a wide open space. Because according to Goldman, only 5% of the online population actually watches this stuff, which means there's a huge addressable market, which is what TAM is. If you ever see that acronym, it's total addressable market. So it's how most startups get money. They say, oh, look at our total addressable market. It's so huge. And the VC asks them, well, how are you going to actually get to that market? Startup says, I didn't figure that out yet. VC says, here's a bunch of money. It's easy, super easy. So in the US and UK, people spend over 8 hours a week gaming. That is a lot of time. And gaming isn't just something that nerds do in their bedroom anymore. 49% of American adults play video games. That includes on the computer, console, TV, or mobile devices. And the thing is, games are super addictive. That's how they're made. You think Facebook and all this social media is addictive? Wait until you get into a game, because you're constantly getting these little achievements for the very little bit of work that you did, and you're getting those dopamine shots again and again, which is fine if you know what's happening and you can control it. But it's like social media on steroids. So of course you're going to have a ton of people interested. Once you get them, you know, through that barrier of, hey, video games are okay to play, because I think there's still that stigma against nerds. And I'm a big TV guy personally. I love TV shows, right? But once you get into a video game, it's real tough to go back to TV because it's just so much more stimulating. And a lot of the best stories that now appear on TV, because we're in this peak TV era, well, before that, they were all in video games. So that's why back in the day, I used to play video games way more than I watched TV. Now the video games graphics are getting better and it's like playing a movie. So of course, a lot of people would rather play a movie than watch a movie. The world's 2.3 billion gamers will spend close to 138 billion on games in 2018. And that's even grown from now, obviously. This is old data. And if you look at the most successful piece of media ever across books, movies, television, everything, it's Grand Theft Auto 5, the video game. It came out in 2013 and has made over $6 billion. No movie or anything has ever come close to that. And when you look at the deal that these games provide, it's $60, right? But then you get this game that you could spend like 60 to 100 hours on. And nowadays they're constantly adding new stuff to the game. So you can keep playing and playing, and that doesn't even include the online content. So you spend $60 and you have hundreds of hours of entertainment that is way more stimulating than anything else. So there is a real value proposition there. And nowadays they even have free games that everyone plays. Like Fortnite is completely free and it's massive. So low barrier to entry, which we'll talk about more in a second. See, American male millennials aged 21 to 35 have made esports just as popular as baseball or ice hockey. Now again, this is from a few years ago, but look at this. Esports is larger than the MLB or NHL. Only the NFL and NBA were bigger. I'm sure this has grown since then. So yeah, that was back in 2017, and now esports audiences eclipse the MLB and NHL combined. So it's a huge market that's continuously growing. And it's the perfect audience to advertise to, because those males 18 between 35 make up 65 to 75% of those gamers. And 43% of them have a household income of over 75,000 and 31% are over 90,000. So this group is one of the hardest to reach in the world, but video games have them. Now there's a few reasons why esports became so popular. One is that it's super accessible. All you need is a PlayStation or an Xbox, and then you can get literal free games. Like Fortnite is free. You could start up like that. It's not like regular sports where you need to go find a basketball court or find a football field or something. You could just play from your home anytime. And it's an even playing field because you don't gotta be big and tall to play video games. I get lit up by little 12-year-olds in Call of Duty all the time, and it's extremely frustrating, but I know that's how it goes in video games now. Now, if we were playing a real sport, obviously I would crush those little kids. I would make them never want to play the sport ever again because I'm a competitive athlete. But in video games, they crush me and leave me crying just a little bit. Kids are mean too. You got to be careful when you put a mic on. And the thing is, if video games are so accessible and anybody could play them regardless of their gender or age, how big they are, then it's going to be a lot more interesting watching people play video games. Because anything they're doing, technically you could do too, as opposed to like the NBA watching Vince Carter do a 360 windmill dunk. I mean, there's no chance I'm going to do that. I'm busy trying to touch the rim. But when you're watching video games, you see that and you're like, hey, there's actually a potential chance that I can do that too. So it becomes a lot more interesting when you think, hey, these guys are my competitors. I'm in the same league as them, as opposed to the 7-foot basketball player where you're like, no, I don't have a chance ever. So it's way more interactive. And one of the ways that kids get so good at things these days, whether it's regular sports or video games, is by going on YouTube and watching. They say that's why the skill level in the NBA consistently increases year after year, because there's all these resources now to learn the game. It's the same thing with these video games. And another great thing is that you don't need to find people to play because you could always be thrown into a game, which is another problem with pickup sports. And this whole thing gets exciting because there are examples of people, just regular everyday people, blowing up in the esports world. Like Ninja. He's making ridiculous over $18 million a year just playing video games, and he was just a random guy. So again, everyone sees that, they all have access to the same stuff, so everyone thinks they got a shot. Another important thing about esports and video games is the metaverse. So basically, these video games aren't just video games anymore. They're becoming like virtual reality in the sense that people are living their lives through them. So Fortnite is the best example in Epic Games. Every little kid is playing Fortnite, right? And it's not because, you know, they just love building the forts and shooting people. Of course they do, but it's more that if all their friends are playing, they got to hang out with them, right? And the only way to do that is through Fortnite. So when all those stupid dance crazes went crazy, like with flossing and stuff, you know, it all came from Fortnite. You can build levels where you don't actually do anything. You're just a little character running around with your friends. So it's more of a social community experience thing. It's very human. And Epic Games realized that, and they keep pushing Fortnite more and more into that direction. They're like on the forefront of this. Travis Scott, he had a whole concert in Fortnite. Christopher Nolan's Tenet, for some reason, they decided the best marketing move was to play a trailer in Fortnite for the 12-year-olds. I don't know why they did that, but that's just an example of what's happening. If all the community, if everyone's on this video game, then all these advertisers are going to want to be there too. And this Tenet movie is supposed to be the biggest, you know, in this year if it ever gets released. So all of this is becoming way more than just a video game. And I've finally been able to experience that because of this CCPV thing. Only way I see my friends is through that game, and we could ride around on trucks together. It's so fun. And the reason we're talking about all this is just to say how big this industry is going to become. It's literally taking over everything. So of course, as investors, we want to invest in it. So there's 6 major players in the esports industry. We got publishers, who are the video game developers. We got the gamers, you know, like Ninja. We got leagues where they play and get ranked, the organizations that kind of put all those leagues together and stuff. You got teams, and then you got streaming platforms. Now, the one you really want to focus on that is the most powerful in this whole chain is the publishers. So these are like Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Activision. So they're so powerful because unlike traditional sports where, you know, you could just go to any basketball court and play, no one owns the game of basketball. When it comes to esports, you're playing a publisher's game. They build and develop those games and own all the rights surrounding them. So you can't go play Fortnite off of the Fortnite game. So they have the rights around where the game is played, who can host the tournaments, and more. And at the end of the day, they own the intellectual property of each game, which every other person in the industry has to play off of. So they're keenly aware that there's one guy in power, the publisher. So again, they're the ones who allow users to stream their IP, and they decide on which game gets a league and which one doesn't. So I remember on YouTube back in the day, maybe it was a few years ago, a lot of streamers, game streamers, were getting trouble because they were streaming games. The publisher would come in and say, hey, copyright claim, you can't use my game, and show it to everyone, which was stupid back then, and everyone kind of knew it because it's such good publicity. Nowadays, these game publishers will literally pay these influencers to play their game on their huge platforms. So PewDiePie PewDiePie did like a 7-part series on The Last of Us 2, which just came out. And he goes through the whole game, right? There's spoilers. You don't even need to play the game after that, but it's such good advertisement that people want to play along with him and see how cool the game is. It's like a demo, and that turns into sales. But again, it's up to the publisher whether they want to allow that to happen. In the past, they didn't. So their power has detrimental consequences for the rest of the esports segments. Leagues, tournaments, sponsorships, they're all at the mercy of the video game publisher. And these developers get most of the revenue from leagues and tournaments too. So there's a lot of different developers in public markets, and most of them have high gross margins, they have modest capital expenditures, but then they have lumpy sales growth because, you know, their growth depends on the latest game getting released. So if there's a flop, it's a big problem. And another thing is that these games, you can't change the rules because the rules are all based up to the developer. So the rules, options, gameplay, physics, items, characters, all determined by the publisher. So at the end of the day, if these publishers are sitting at the top of the food chain, it really comes down to their incentives because they're not focused on improving leagues or tournaments or streaming platforms, at least not yet. They only care about one thing, which is improving the game quality in their own company. So because of this, if you want to invest in something, you probably want to invest in a publisher, which those are the companies we're about to go over. But the one other area that I'm super interested in, which I haven't seen many companies that do this, but then again, I'm not as plugged into this space. But the thing that I'm thinking about is like injury rehabilitation for video game players or some type of physical training. Because the thing is, if everyone's going to be playing more and more video games, they are going to get messed up, especially if they're trying to play as much as Ninja does. That guy plays insane hours. It's not good for you, right? So what are you going to do if you're staring at a screen, your eyes are bloodshot, you're not moving around, you're constantly clicking buttons? We've had these ergonomic problems in corporations forever, right? But it's even worse with video games because you're really glued in. You've got to be paying attention the entire time. I just watched Ford versus Ferrari. It came out on HBO, and those 24-hour races are insane, and they do a good job of showing how intense they are, but you're completely wiped out after that, right? Driving at such high speeds and you're so strung out for that long. Video games is more similar to that because of how fast the action is and how glued in you gotta be. So you're definitely gonna have some strain injuries. I barely play it compared to a lot of people, and I've already had them. So I'd be interested in a company like that in the future. But for right now, one of the most impressive game developers is CD Projekt Red. These are the guys who made the Witcher games. They're almost a $10 billion company, and they're just coming off a historical year for sales and profitability. The Witcher has sold over 50 million copies, and they had a huge boost because, you know, Netflix released the Witcher series, which was super popular, one of their most popular series. It was pretty good, I liked it. And I watched that series and went and got the game and played it. Fantastic game, but it's from 2015, it's so old, but people are still buying, still playing, they're still into it. It's a huge universe now, and because of their success, they have a really strong balance sheet now. They're strong enough to withstand any boom or bust cycle of their new game releases, and they have a really big game releasing soon, and that game is Cyberpunk 2077, which everybody is super excited for. It's going to be a huge game, and it's supposed to be really next level. If it flops, that would be very bad for this company, but they also have extreme operating leverage, which is very good. Something that's interesting about them is that they have 0 microtransactions in their single player games. So I told you Grand Theft Auto 5 was the best grossing video game of all time, best grossing piece of media. They had a bunch of microtransactions. So microtransactions are just things that you could buy in game. So like Fortnite is free, but you can use money to buy different character outfits and things like that. And you would think it's stupid, but people spend so much money and these companies make a ton of money off of it. But CD Projekt Red, they don't use any of that in their games, which gives them a very loyal fan base. Because while some people are fine buying all these extras, other people are like, this is ridiculous. Give me everything I want in the game right now. Don't make me pay for this extra stuff. So they really appreciate it when a company like CD Projekt doesn't do that. So what they lose in additional revenue from not doing that, they make up for in dedicated hardcore customers. So people look at CDR as the company dedicated to making the absolutely best RPG of all time. And that's it. And that's why everyone is so excited for this Cyberpunk game, including myself. Now the company isn't trading cheaply. Its PE ratio is over 100 and its enterprise value to its EBITDA is 128. But again, we're stepping into a long-term secular growth trend, and CDR is perfectly positioned as a publisher to capture that growth. They have a dedicated base of super fans and they absolutely produce the highest quality games in their category. The Witcher was amazing. They're anticipating over 500% revenue growth and 74% EBITDA margins next year. If you look at a weekly chart of CD Projekt, it looks amazing. Thing is going straight up. So it's a very, very strong trend. Electronic Arts is another publisher that I like. You can see it's had a very nice recovery since that CCPV crash. And you know, all video games are getting a boost because of the quarantine. Right now it's consolidating in a tight little short-term basing pattern. pattern right here. If it pops above this level around 131.65, there might be a good buying opportunity. And another one that looks good is Activision. They have a nice trend just like Electronic Arts, and they too are forming a little basing pattern right here. You can see it broke above this line right here of this cup, but it's kind of fighting that breakout. It hasn't taken off yet. So it's forming a kind of distorted cup and handle here, but if it breaks up above this handle portion, so above 76.90, again, it might be a very good entry. So as we can see, this whole esports and video game space will be very lucrative in the years to come. But again, picking these stocks is only one step of the process, and it's a very small step. You want to make sure you have your full strategy in place, and this training can help you with that. There's a link up above in this video and down below in the description and comments. Check it out. It's free. It's worthwhile. And if you like this video, make sure you subscribe for more. Do that, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay fallible out there. Bye.